I know you guys are probably thinking, okay, what about the fentanyl? This is like the main one. And we're going to get into that because essentially all of these methods tied together. Now, this also leads into a main form of sort of espionage. I think, you know what, it just really is blatant objective espionage that's happening in the US and Canada, which are the secret overseas police stations. Okay, I really wanted to talk about this because I'd actually reported on these police stations prior to even working with IRONCLAD or really doing any of the organized crime reporting I'm doing now. But the CCP has operated dozens of clandestine police stations around the world, essentially under the guise that they are protecting Chinese nationals living abroad or providing consular services. Now, these stations are typically linked to China's Ministry of Public Security and are often embedded within community associations that cater to overseas Chinese people. But these are not traditional diplomatic outposts like consulates or embassies. Instead, they function outside of any formal diplomatic framework entirely, and they're typically unregistered and unrecognized by the host nation that they're set up in. Even, I could go as far as to say that they actually try to keep this a secret from the host nation, because when these secret police stations are uncovered by national intelligence agencies, they're immediately shut down. What these stations are really doing is surveilling and intimidating members of the Chinese diaspora who speak out against the CCP. Okay, this is pushing this CCP ideology beyond borders. This includes the Falun Gong practitioners, the Uyghur activists, Hong Kong pro-democracy exiles, and Taiwanese independence activists. Now, you'll actually probably see members of these groups throughout your communities. I mean, depending where you live, but I've seen these Falun Gong practitioners over the course of my life, you know, protesting on street corners or outside certain temples. And these secret police services are meant to entirely dismantle and sometimes even punish these groups. A 2022 report by Safeguard Defenders, which is a Madrid-based NGO, a human rights NGO, documented at least 102 police stations, like undocumented police stations, in at least 53 countries. Canada really does top this, and I've been seeing this happen over the course of my life of being Canadian. In 2023, actually, our National Police Service launched investigations into these facilities because there were so many intelligence briefings from CSIS, our National Intelligence Agency, into the amount of police stations, CCP police stations that were running in Canada, and also their immense influence that they held over the Chinese community. Now, in the States, there was a major police station operating in New York City's Chinatown, disguised as an NGO. So do you see what I mean when I say that, okay, not only are they operating like without acknowledgement or permission or anything, but also they try to cover it up. I think that speaks volumes. The FBI actually raided this New York Chinatown police station in 2023, and 2 U.S. residents were charged with conspiring to act as agents of the Chinese government. The list goes on, and we can get into that. But let's talk a little bit about what we all are here for. How is the CCP using drugs and transnational organized crime groups that perhaps have absolutely no ties to China to control and dismantle Western societies? Here's the thing. Precursors for fentanyl, as we all know, were originally sourced from China through CCP-linked pharmaceutical and chemical companies. These were the only companies or people that knew how to make these precursors. The US cracked down on some of them. Okay, production and a lot of the operations have moved to India. This is what Joaquin had to say about this.
I think that one is just the Indians, and probably you'll probably find some Chinese and loafers in this as well, discovering that, hey, we can get in on this because the Indian government wouldn't care. Like, even if they tried to clamp down on it, the same issues that the Chinese face, or the same obstacles and issues that the Chinese face, the Indian government face. But then also you have to understand is that the Indian government is very corrupt, depending upon the state. Like, I think this mean just the notion of the Indian companies are able to set up these fentanyl factories or precursor factories or entities to make and send out the precursors so quickly just tells me that there's some level of Indian government involvement, whether it be and mainly through corruption. I doubt there would be official, but it's one of the things where like it just shows you how corrupt some of those levels of government are. I wouldn't be too surprised if there is a Chinese connection.
Okay.
Because they would need to know how to make the precursors, the precursor drugs. And so what better person to actually try to is Chinese individuals moving to India to actually set up the labs. Now, another possibility is that the Indians themselves are doing it through assistance and direct assistance from China. So either of those possibilities do exist. But then also they know that this is a good bargaining chip, as seen during the Biden administration, where they had this, I don't know, I forgot what it's called, the Wood or the San Francisco Accords, something like that.
Yeah.
Where they agreed that, we'll tap down on where the Chinese said, okay, we'll agree to cancel or agree to restrict the precursors and clamp down on the groups only if you removed a certain entity from the sanction list who just so happen to have connections to the ongoing weird genocide. If you could just do that, we'll help you. And what happened?
At the end of the day, the CCP essentially maintains plausible deniability by not overtly empowering the cartels or overtly operating with them. However, if it were up to me to make this decision, I would say it is quite overt. Okay, I think that they don't maintain plausible deniability because we see right in front of our faces just how much influence, action, and power the CCP in China has with these organized crime groups, and exactly what they're doing to use them to their advantage and to ensure that these deadly drugs or whatever it is get into these societies and dismantle and destroy these communities. And Joaquin and I talked about this, how this relates back to Chinese history.
And then also with the Mexican cartels, they wouldn't really want to be seen as being involved with them. And I think, and so that's where the overseas associations, the criminal groups, that's where they're coming to play, because there's plausible deniability there. I wouldn't be too surprised if certain criminal groups based in either Hong Kong or in China would have those things, because in some way, shape, or form, those groups will also have links to CCP or in the case of Hong Kong, to the mainland associated or aligned political parties, or even the government as well.
The CCP literally studies dynastic collapses and uses these lessons from the Opium Wars.
The CCP are historians, the students of history. The reason why is because they study how the dynasties fell, especially the Qing dynasty. But then also they study how, the nationalists fell through corruption in the Qing dynasty. through corruption through corruption not only through officials, but also societal corruption. And so they saw how bad the Opium Wars were on Chinese society. It literally rotted the society from within. And when the Qing tried to ask the British, could you please not send so much stuff to kill citizens with, the British responded with cannon fire and rifles. And so the CCP took from that is, if you're in a position of power and if you're able to influence society negatively, we don't have to, give the green light necessarily, but we don't really have to stop it. So exactly, if you read out a lot of the foreign affairs transcripts that China produces about fentanyl prices, or puts out involved in the fentanyl prices, they will say that, this is a societal problem. The United States needs to look within.
Yeah.
You need to, and if you go look at what, the Qing dynasty, the lawyers regime, the Qing dynasty officials, I forget his name, but then also the reply from, the British during the, before the Opium Wars, they had similar comments that this is a societal issue. You can't really blame us for providing the drugs.
So at the end of the day, what's their strategy? Let Western society self-destruct, then deny involvement. Cover your back.